بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على سيد الأنبياء والمرسلين وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين اللهم صل على سيدنا ومولانا محمد وعلى آل سيدنا ومولانا محمد وبارك وسلم أما بعد السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. We praise Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for granting us an infinite amount of blessings, mercies and boons. We beg Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to send His salutations, peace and blessings upon Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, his family, his companions and those who follow his way. And we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to give us afiyah, goodness, wellness, especially for the majority of the ummah that are going through difficulties. What we see in the world today is that the kuffar and those who do not believe in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, they have an apparent success. I say apparent because we know true success lies with what is with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So we should not be fooled and beguiled by what they're going through. They do have success in terms of the dunya we respect. Last khutbah we talked about what is success, what is the definition of success. And a believer has a specific definition of success which they are not fulfilling. True success for the Muslim is to please Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and to actually undergo stress and difficulties in this life. Even if the political situation is good, if the situation that we are going through financially is very good, a believer will still have to undergo struggles. And this is mujahada of the nafs, jihad of the nafs, meaning controlling one's desires. This world is not meant for you and I to enjoy. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala didn't make it for that. He has allowed certain things to be permissible, and that is fine, as long as we're within the boundaries of what Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam has showed us. So Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam did have some enjoyments, but he was such a person that led a very ascetic life, despite the fact of having the capability of having a very luxurious life. And we all know the very famous hadith where Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam explains that Jibreel alayhi salam came to him and he said, if you like the entire mountain, and in Mecca they're surrounded by mountains, he says all of these mountains can be turned into gold for you and it'll follow you wherever you would like. Meaning he could be the richest man ever. There's no person in the history of humanity who had that much wealth where you have mountains of gold following you wherever you want. This was possible for Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. He could have had it. All he had to say is, yes, I want it. And he could have defeated his opponents. He could have controlled everyone. He could have had a dominion over the earth. In another narration, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam caught a jinn. It was trying to mess with him when he was performing his tahajjud. There was a shaitan, and he caught the shaitan. And he said to the Sahaba the next morning, I could have brought this shaitan before you, but I remembered the dua of Sulaiman alayhi salam, who asked Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in his prayer, which is in the Quran, Oh Allah, forgive me and give me a mulk and a kingdom that no one else will have. So I wanted for him to retain that luxury and that gift that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave him of having dominion that no one else will have. Otherwise, Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam could have had that. Meaning he could have tamed that jinn and he could have made it present, and he could have had all control over all jinn if he wanted as well. So he could have had as many riches as he liked. Also physical power, as we know Sulaiman alayhi salam had a lot of power due to the jinn. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala states that they would dive deep into the ocean and extract pearls and gems for Sulaiman alayhi salam. And they were also integral in the building of Quds, the area of Bayt al-Maqdis, etc. The jinn were the ones that made it for Sulaiman alayhi salam. They were terrified of Sulaiman alayhi salam. That's why some people in today's time also, the amilin, those who extract jinn from people, sometimes they take the name of Sulaiman alayhi salam to scare jinn. They're afraid of him. So Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam could have had that. Even to a higher degree, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave him these options. And then Jibreel alayhi salam also told him, if you like as well, you could remain poor, in a poor state, in terms of your physical wealth, in terms of dunya. And Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam was our model, our role model, the one one that we are to follow if we want success. He wanted to stay in a impoverished state. He wanted to stay in a place where he doesn't have much wealth. And his response was, I would rather one day be thankful to Allah. Whenever little food comes my way, I'll be thankful to Allah. The next day, I don't want food, so I can remember how weak I am. I want these reminders that I am a weak individual and I am in need of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So I want to stay poor. So this was a willful poverty from Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So a believer is meant to struggle in life because we understand that this is not the permanent abode. The dunya is not permanent. It's very finite, very short period of time. You and I could go home today and our lives could be over. It could be over right now. This doesn't seem like a reality for you and I, but we know our Palestinian brothers and sisters, it is a reality for them. Every day they're waking up and they could say, this is it. Actually, not even just a day, but this hour could be my last. And it's a reality for them. So we need to wake up. We need to realize that this life was given to us to struggle for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Struggle against your desires. Struggle against the difficulties that come our way. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala promises that those who undergo difficulties for Him, they will not be forgotten. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does not forget those who struggle for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala talks about this at the end of Surah Al-Imran, verse 195, after mentioning the dua of those who ponder about the creation of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. They remember Allah when they're standing, when they're sitting, when they're reclining, lying down. They're always remembering Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And they make a dua to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. They say, oh Allah, you didn't create this universe for no reason. We realize that you are the creator of the universe. You are alone. There is no partner to you. And you will take everyone to task. There is a Yawm al-Qiyamah. So they make a dua and they say, oh Allah, save us from the fire of Jahannam. So after this passage, a very beautiful passage about those who Allah says they have intellect. Ulul albab, people of great intellect. They're the ones that reflect over the universe, all of the different things that happen to them, whether it is a good thing or a bad thing. They reflect over it. And they always conclude with, oh Allah, you are the greatest. You have decided this to take place. Save me from your punishment. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, فَاسْتَجَابَ لَهُمْ رَبُّهُمْ. Their Lord answers their dua. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will answer their dua. Meaning if you do a good action, you're pondering over Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, His creation, why He created you, what is your purpose in life, and you conclude that I am to return back to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, I am to remember Him and make dua to Him, He will answer that dua, the dua that you make after that. And for these people, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, He answers their dua, they will be saved from the punishment of the hereafter. And Allah says to them, أَنِّي لَا أُضِيعُ عَمَلَ عَامِلٍ مِّنكُم مِّن ذَكَرٍ أَوْ أُنثَى بَعْضُكُم مِّن بَعْضٍ. Indeed, I will not ruin the efforts of you. Whatever each one of you have done, all of the salah you have performed, all of the du'as that you have made, you may not see it manifest in dunya, it might be kept for you in the akhirah. All of the fasting, all of the umrahs and hajj, all of the zakat that you're giving, no one knows this but Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Even ourselves, does anyone know how many times they perform salah? No one really knows. Do you know how many times you prayed your sunnah? Do you know how many times you woke up for tahajjud? Who keeps a log of this since they were born? We don't have that number. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows exactly what it is. He says, I will not waste any effort that you have made. And in one hadith, Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam says, even a thorn that pricks you and I and you feel a little bit of pain, Allah knows that, it's recorded, and you will get reward for that. As long as you don't complain. As long as you turn back to Allah. As long as you realize that this thorn prick was from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and I will be patient in this difficulty, no matter how small, because I know He's going to reward me according to my patience. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, whether they are male, whether they are female, I don't care. If they do good actions and they are hoping in me, they're going to receive the fruits of that. فَالَّذِينَ هَاجَرُوا وَأُخْرِجُوا مِنْ دِيَارِهِمْ وَأُوذُوا فِي سَبِيلِي وَقَاتَلُوا وَقُتِلُوا لَأُكَفِّرَنَّ عَنْهُمْ سَيِّئَاتِهِمْ وَلَأُدْخِلَنَّهُمْ جَنَّاتٍ تَجْرِي مِنْ تَحْتِهَا الْأَنْهَارُ ثَوَابًا مِنْ عِنْدِ اللَّهِ وَاللَّهُ عِنْدَهُ حُسْنُ الثَّوَابِ. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala speaks of those people who have undergone difficulty. The Muhajirin, the Muslims who were with Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam in Mecca, who underwent a great amount of difficulties, stress, punishment, adhab, torture, for the sake of Allah. Allah addresses them. Those who did hijrah, who had to leave their homes, they were displaced, they were forced out of their homes. وَأُخْرِجُوا مِنْ دِيَارِهِمْ. They were forced out of their homes. Their homes were destroyed. They were forced out. وَأُذُوا فِي سَبِيلِي. And they were put into various forms of torture due to my cause. In today's time, our brothers and sisters in Palestine, they fit this description exactly. الَّذِينَ هَاجَرُوا. Many of them had to leave. وَأُخْرِجُوا مِنْ دِيَارِهِمْ. They were taken out of their homes. Not that they left the homes. أُخْرِجُوا. They were forced out of their homes. Their homes were destroyed. And they're currently being destroyed. وَأُذُوا فِي سَبِيلِي. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says they are harmed due to my sake. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying, why are they being harmed? Is because they say, La ilaha illallah. وَمَا نَقَمُوا مِنْهُمْ إِلَّا أَن يُؤْمِنُوا بِاللَّهِ الْعَزِيزِ الْحَمِيدِ. Allah says in Surah Al-Buruj, they were only punished, they were only harmed because of their belief in Allah. That's the only reason. We are reminded time and time again, it is the world against Islam. Everyone wants to join forces against the deen of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala makes this very clear. You have the awliya of Allah and you have the awliya of shaitan. Those who are close to Allah, who will support His deen, who will support His way, and those who are close to shaitan and who sacrifice their akhirah for this dunya. And where time and again we're told and we're given this choice, which group do we want to belong to? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is asking us at all times. So these people, فَالَّذِينَ هَاجَرُوا وَأُخْرِجُوا مِنْ دِيَارِهِمْ وَأُذُوا فِي سَبِيلِي وَقَاتَلُوا وَقُتِلُوا. They fought and they were killed. What do they get? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says about them, لَأُكَفِّرَنَّ عَنْهُمْ سَيِّئَاتِهِمْ. As for their sins, they're erased. Whatever they have done, they've made mistakes in the dunya, they've sinned, they're humans. Various types of sin. But due to the difficulties that they have undergone for the sake of Allah, Allah loves that so much. He says, I will do kufran, I will do takfir, meaning لَأُكَفِّرَنَّ عَنْهُمْ. He will remove them. All of the sins will be forgiven by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. وَلَأُدْخِلَنَّهُمْ جَنَّاتٍ تَجْرِي مِنْ تَحْتِهَا الْأَنْهَارُ. And I will enter them into gardens under which rivers flow, meaning the gardens of paradise is their abode. ثَوَابًا مِنْ عِنْدِ اللَّهِ. This is a reward from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. No one else can give you this. The reward of the hereafter is only from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. There is no intermediary for the reward of the hereafter. This is what waits for those people who undergo difficulties for the sake of Allah. Be it physical, mental, spiritual, all these types of difficulties that the believer undergoes. And the believer will undergo difficulties. That's part of Islam. Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam would tell people, if you're going to accept Islam, be ready for difficulties. This is part of the deal. You can't be a Muslim without difficulties. Allah is saying that Muslims are very strong-minded. You have to be. If you're going to say, La ilaha illallah Muhammadur Rasulullah, you're signing up for difficulties. But this is so that you may have an infinite life of pleasure in the hereafter. And there's no greater pleasure than Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's pleasure. As Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, ثَوَابًا مِنْ عِنْدِ اللَّهِ. This is from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He has this prepared for them. وَاللَّهُ عِنْدَهُ حُسْنُ الثَّوَابِ. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has the best rewards. Such rewards that Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam says in one hadith, what waits for a person in Jannah, مَا لَا عَيْنٌ رَأَتْ وَلَا أُذُنٌ سَمِعَتْ وَلَا خَطَرَ عَلَى قَلْبِ بَشَرٍ. What waits for people in Jannah, the description that you and I have in Jannah is the bare minimum. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says words cannot really describe Jannah to you. So what you see in the Quran, in the Hadith, these are the lowest levels of Jannah. He says in one Hadith, what Allah has prepared for the mu'min and the believer in Jannah is that which no eye has ever seen. Your eyes have never seen something like this. Nor have your ears ever heard this. Nor could your hearts ever perceive what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has ready for you. He has it ready for you. He is the one that created this dunya. Imagine, He created colors, He created shapes, He created everything that you have. Heat, cold, temperature, size, everything is made by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala from His infinite knowledge. He made you. Can He not make something that you cannot fathom? Can He not make something that is beyond your wildest imagination? And in today's time, our imagination grows and grows with all of this, CGI and different kind of things that people are making. Jannah is far more than that. Whatever you can think of, you haven't even scratched the surface. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala encourages us. Think as much as you can. In one hadith, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala talks about the last person to enter Jannah. He was in the fire of Jahannam due to his sins. Eventually he comes out. Allah allows him to come out of Jahannam. And he's the last one to enter Jannah. Everyone's already in Jannah when he approaches the gates. And he can hear them laughing and having a good time in Jannah. And he really wants to get in. And he's not sure if he should ask. He was just in Jahannam. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says to him, what would you like? Do you want to go to Jannah? He says, of course. There's nothing more that I would like than Jannah. And then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala asks him, make your wishes. So he starts asking for different things to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, tamanna, wish as much as you like. Whatever your mind can fathom, start making your du'as and wishes, I'll give you. And then at the end, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, would you like all of this? He says, of course. Would you like double? Of course. And then He says, Allah, are you joking with me? Because I was a person that did nothing in my dunya. All I did was I believed in you. No salah, no zakah, no saum, no hajj. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, you'll have all of this and 10 times more. More than anything you could imagine. This is the last person to enter Jannah. What about those who are shuhada, salihin? What are the righteous people who have the upper echelons of Jannah? What is waiting for them? When you put your faith in the hereafter, inshallah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will make this life easy for you. It doesn't mean that there won't be difficulties, but He will give you the perseverance and the sabr to deal with those difficulties. This comes from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Those who have that capability, the strength of iman, you will see them undergoing the most difficult situations. Yet, they are pleased with Allah. You don't see them uttering a single word of complaint against Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Who is the one that gave them this power? When the kuffar are watching what the brothers and sisters in Palestine are going through, losing several children all in one day and then saying, Hasbunallahu wa ni'mal wakeel, and I'm happy for what happened, and I have faith in my Lord, they cannot fathom this. The kuffar cannot fathom, how is this person having so much faith? Everything they had has been taken away. Their home has been destroyed. Their children have been taken away. Their family, completely gone. I was talking to a friend of mine. He was saying yesterday, he knows a Palestinian brother. In one bombing, he lost 48 family members. In one bombing. It was not spread out throughout the month. 48 family members in one single moment were gone. He's the only one that survives. But he's saying, Hasbunallahu wa ni'mal wakeel. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is enough for us. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the best handler of affairs. They always turn back to Allah. The resilience that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given to this group of people, we should take a lesson from this. If I was put into that situation by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, how would I react? And if I would react negatively, what can I do at this time to develop my iman and my faith in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? Because they realize something that we are lacking. They realize that this life is short and it's meaningless. There's no real meaning to this life other than ibadah of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We need to get our heads out of the gutter and start thinking about what is the purpose of life. Why did Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give me a new life? Is it for luxury? Is it so I can earn as much as possible and leave an empire behind and have nothing for the hereafter? The true empire is the empire of the hereafter. وَإِذَا رَأَيْتَ ثَمَّ رَأَيْتَ نَعِيمًا وَمُلْكًا كَبِيرًا. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, when they see what is prepared for them in the hereafter, they will find a huge kingdom waiting for them. The kingdom of the akhirah. That is for those people who struggle for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You and I cannot be deceived and beguiled by the apparent success of the kuffar. For the believers, Allah has something really great in store for them. Allah says regarding the kuffar, however, لا يغرنك تقلب الذين كفروا في البلاد. After the ayah that I just mentioned, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala speaks of the kuffar. Do not let their roaming about doing whatever they want deceive you. You see them doing whatever they want. You see them enjoying whatever they want, owning empires, billions of dollars, at their disposal. Don't let that deceive you. This is not true power. Mata'un qaleel. Listen, this is a little bit. A little bit they have with them. Billions of dollars is nothing. It's a little bit. ثُمَّ مَأْوَاهُمْ جَهَنَّمْ وَبِئْسَ الْمِهَادُ. They can enjoy the dunya. Allah gives that to them because it's meaningless. Allah doesn't care about dunya. In one hadith, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam says, if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala cared about the dunya just a little bit, the amount of a mosquito's wing, if it was that valuable to Allah, how much is the wing of a mosquito? What is its value to you? Every summer we're swatting hundreds of them. There's no value in the wing of a mosquito. Had the dunya been equivalent to the wing of a mosquito in value in the sight of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He would not give a drink to a kafir. A single sip of water, they would not be allowed to have that. Because they're not deserving. They don't believe in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala who created all of this. However, we see the kuffar with much. They have so much. Why? Because this dunya means nothing. It's a test. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala made this as a test. It means nothing. But the akhirah means everything for us. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, do not be beguiled. Do not be deceived. Do not be led astray by their apparent success. Mata'un qaleel. It's just a little bit, and then their destination is Jahannam, and what a bad destination that is. And then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala talks about those who have taqwa, those who were very strong, those who had a lot of discipline, those who controlled the nafs, those who sacrificed for the sake of Allah. لَكِنِ الَّذِينَ اتَّقَوْا رَبَّهُمْ. As for those who fear Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, who control themselves, who know that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is watching when they're in solitude, Allah is watching you. When you're in public, Allah is watching you. How can you sin when you know Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is watching you even in solitude? For those people, لَهُمْ جَنَّاتٌ تَجْرِي مِنْ تَحْتِهَا الْأَنْهَارُ خَالِدِينَ فِيهَا نُزُلًا مِنْ عِنْدِ اللَّهِ. They will have gardens, they will have paradise. Rivers will flow underneath. It's a very beautiful scene. Forever they will remain. نُزُلًا مِنْ عِنْدِ اللَّهِ. This is Allah hosting them. This dunya is you undergoing difficulty, and Allah will be your host in the akhirah. وَمَا عِنْدَ اللَّهِ خَيْرٌ لِلْأَبْرَارِ. And what Allah has, that is best for those who are righteous. If you really want something, you want to treat yourself, then treat yourself to Jannah. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying, what Allah has is much better than anything else. But to get what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has ready for you, you have to sacrifice. You have to undergo difficulties. In another ayah in Surah Ibrahim, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَلَا تَحْسَبَنَّ اللَّهَ غَافِلًا عَمَّا يَعْمَلُ الظَّالِمُونَ. Don't think Allah is unaware of the oppressors. He knows fully well what they're doing. He knows more than them. He's having it recorded. Every single thought that they're having to commit crimes against humanity, that is being recorded by the angels and the scribes. إِنَّمَا يُؤَخِّرُهُمْ لِيَوْمٍ تَشْخَصُ فِيهِ الْأَبْصَارُ. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is letting them do that. They're allowed to do that, and they are left for reckoning. All of their actions is going to be reckoned by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. They're left alone so that they pile up the sins. This is called istidraj. Istidraj is where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala allows someone to keep on doing wrong so that the sins pile up and their punishment is even greater. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, مُهْطِعِينَ مُقْنِعِي رُؤُوسِهِمْ لَا يَرْتَدُّ إِلَيْهِمْ طَرْفُهُمْ وَأَفْئِدَتُهُم هَوَاءٌ. On that day, they'll be lowering their heads. Their hearts will be as if it is in their throats, pounding so severely out of nervousness. It's as if it's in their throats. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says about their situation. Now, why does Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give us difficulties? Of course, this life is a test. He wants us to turn back to Him. In Surah Al-Ma'idah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَلَوْ أَنَّهُمْ أَقَامُوا التَّوْرَاةَ وَالْإِنْجِيلَ وَمَا أُنزِلَ إِلَيْهِمْ مِنْ رَبِّهِمْ لَأَكَلُوا مِنْ فَوْقِهِمْ وَمِنْ تَحْتِ أَرْجُلِهِمْ. The Ahlul Kitab, Jews and the Christians, if they were to establish the Torah, the Injil, وَمَا أُنزِلَ إِلَيْهِمْ مِنْ رَبِّهِمْ, as well as the Quran, because if you truly follow the Torah and the Injil, you will follow the Quran. The message is there. If they were to follow that, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, they would eat from above themselves and below themselves. Allah will sustain them so much and give them so much halal, tayyib rizq. They would have it coming from above and below. Halal, good rizq. Only if they followed what they had received from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. مِنْهُمْ أُمَّةٌ مُقْتَصِدَةٌ. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, among them there are righteous people, and they come to Islam. وَكَثِيرٌ مِّنْهُمْ سَاءَ مَا يَعْمَلُونَ. However, many of them, most of them, how evil are their actions, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says. So we call them to make amal on their own kitab. Read your kitab, understand what's in there, and it will point you towards the righteousness found in the Quran as well. Come back to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. In another verse, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَلَوْ أَنَّ أَهْلَ الْقُرَىٰ آمَنُوا وَاتَّقَوْا. If the people of the city, meaning it's talking about the Ahlul Kitab, specific city, if they were to have iman and taqwa, what is the result of having iman and taqwa? لَفَتَحْنَا عَلَيْهِمْ بَرَكَاتٍ مِّنَ السَّمَاءِ وَالْأَرْضِ. We would have opened for them the doors of rizq and sustenance and happiness in the heavens and the earth. Allah will sustain them. وَلَكِنْ كَذَّبُوا. However, they denied. They belied the Nabi. They turned away from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and the teachings of Islam. فَأَخَذْنَاهُمْ بِمَا كَانُوا يَكْسِبُونَ. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, I have gripped them. I have seized them for what they used to do. What is their sin? Among many, many sins, Surah Al-Baqarah goes in depth regarding the sins of the Ahlul Kitab. Let us open the Quran and start reading. You don't know Arabic? Fine, read in translation. Read the Quran. We have lost touch with the Quran. We have lost touch with the word of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and we remain ignorant of deen, and we are taken advantage of. Until we come back upon the Quran of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, His message, we will not find success. As an ummah, we cannot find success. Why have we limited Quran and Hadith to ulama? Why are these people the only ones who read Quran and Hadith? Did Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam only address scholars? Was Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's message only for ulama? It's meant for all of humanity. Not even just for Muslims, all of humanity. You and I are being left behind. Many kuffar, they're reading Quran, they're accepting Islam, they know more about deen than we do. Just because they opened the kitab and they read it. Allah encourages us to read His message. If you have time to read a novel, if you have time to read a textbook in college, you have time to read the Quran. You have time to read the Hadith. But the question is Allah inviting me to do so? Understand that if you cannot read the Quran, you don't have enough time, Allah doesn't want you to. Allah doesn't want you to read it. Why? Because some sin that you have done. You have wronged yourself, so Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala deprives you. But if you feel that you want to get connected to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, open up the Quran and read. What is their sin? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, Min ajli dhalik. Before this, He talks about the story of Habil, Qabil, Cain and Abel. And then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, due to this, the sin of murder, كَتَبَنَا عَلَى بَنِي إِسْرَائِيل. We have made it compulsory upon Banu Israel, and we've made a law for them. أَنَّهُ مَنْ قَتَلَ نَفْسًا بِغَيْرِ نَفْسٍ أَوْ فَسَادٍ فِي الْأَرْضِ فَكَأَنَّمَا قَتَلَ النَّاسَ جَمِيعًا. If one person kills a single individual out of dhulm and oppression, or they cause oppression on the earth, you kill one single person without true right, it is as if you've killed all of humanity. Your wrong is egregious. The wrong that you've done, don't think you can get away with it. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has this recorded. وَمَنْ أَحْيَاهَا فَكَأَنَّمَا أَحْيَا النَّاسَ جَمِيعًا. And if you save a life, if what you have stated or what you have done resulted in the saving of a single individual, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has that written for you as if you've saved all of humanity. وَلَقَدْ جَاءَتْهُمْ رُسُلُنَا بِالْبَيِّنَاتِ ثُمَّ إِنَّ كَثِيرًا مِّنْهُمْ بَعْدَ ذَلِكَ فِي الْأَرْضِ لَمُسْرِفُونَ. Many different anbiya were sent to Banu Israel. Anbiya were sent to them. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says regarding them, after they've received the message from the anbiya, they caused corruption on the land. After a Nabi came. Nabi came with the information, they did corruption after that. If they did this with anbiya, they killed and murdered anbiya, what do they think? What do you think that they'll do with us if they have the chance? Right? That's Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala saying. So as believers, we have to turn back to Allah. We have to lift these veils of deception before our eyes. I'm going to finish with an ayah. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala talks about the duty of a believer. In Surah Al-Ma'idah verse 54. يَا أَيُّهَا الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا مَنْ يَرْتَدَّ مِنْكُمْ عَنْ دِينِهِ فَسَوْفَ يَأْتِي اللَّهُ بِقَوْمٍ يُحِبُّهُمْ وَيُحِبُّونَهُ. Allah says, if any of you leave Islam, go ahead. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala doesn't need you. Allah doesn't need us. Why? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, if you leave Islam, you leave the truth, you leave this path, Allah will bring another group. They will be kuffar, but Allah will allow them to accept Islam. He will bring them in and they will be better than you. What are their attributes? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, if you fail to have these attributes, Allah will replace you with those who do have these attributes. يُحِبُّهُمْ وَيُحِبُّونَ. They love Allah, Allah loves him. Allah loves them. Right? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala loves these people and they will love Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So who are these individuals? And this is a test. Allah wants you to have these qualities. And if you don't, He'll replace you. أَذِلَّةٍ عَلَى الْمُؤْمِنِينَ أَعِزَّةٍ عَلَى الْكَافِرِينَ. They are those who are very soft-hearted towards their brothers and sisters. Those who have iman and belief in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that is your true family. As Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says to Nuh alayhi salam, when his son drowned in the flood, Nuh alayhi salam said, "Oh Allah, you told me that my family would be safe." Allah says, he wasn't your family. It was his son. He's not your family. إِنَّهُ عَمَلٌ غَيْرُ صَالِحٍ. He was not a Muslim. Thus your true family are those who are believers. So they are soft towards the believers and tough regarding the kuffar. They don't let the kuffar stomp on them. They're tough people. يُجَاهِدُونَ فِي سَبِيلِ اللَّهِ وَلَا يَخَافُونَ لَوْمَةَ لَائِمٍ. They struggle for the sake of Allah. The first and primary thing in their life is, how will Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala be happy with me? وَلَا يَخَافُونَ لَوْمَةَ لَائِمٍ. They do not care about criticism. Criticize me all you want. Label me all you want. Do whatever you like. Make whatever titles and labels for anyone who speaks out. I will keep on doing it because I'm not doing it for you. I'm not doing it for the label. I'm doing it for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And He transcends everything in this dunya. ذَلِكَ فَضْلُ اللَّهِ يُؤْتِيهِ مَن يَشَاءُ. All of these beautiful qualities, loving Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, being soft towards the believers and feeling their situation, and being tough with those who try to take advantage of us, and not fearing anyone but Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, this is fadlu min Allah. This is a grace that Allah gives to those who really turn to Allah. Wallahu wasi'un alim. Allah is very vast in His gifts. He is knowledgeable of what you do. So you and I need to turn to Allah. In this ayah, there's 5 things Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala talks about that He wants us to have. Number 1, we need to love Allah. So turn back to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. What did Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala do for us to go away from Him? To not do His dhikr, to not perform salah? We have to turn back to Allah. Number 2, be soft with the believers. When you see someone undergoing this difficulty, just because they say, I believe in Allah, be soft towards them, feel what they're going through. Number 3, they are tough with the insolences of the disbelievers. When the disbelievers step on you, on your family, we're not going to allow that. We're going to speak up. We're going to let our voices be heard in the correct manner that Islam teaches us. Number 4, they struggle for the sake of Allah. How do you struggle? Depends on your situation. How do you and I struggle right now? We gain knowledge. We suppress the desires of our nafs. We speak out against injustices. This is our fight for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And number 5, they do not fear criticism. They're bold. They are brave. They realize that this life is short and there's a greater life waiting for us. So we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to imbue all of these beautiful traits within ourselves, to give us tawfiq to understand that this life is very short and it can end today, and that the life of the hereafter is infinite and there is no end to it. وصلى الله تبارك وتعالى على خير خلقه محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين.